Greetings and welcome to Ugandan Catholics Online. It's indeed another great day where we have the first African Papal Nuncio to be designated to different countries in the world by the Pope. So my name is Lubega Victor, the host, and we're going to be chatting with the Archbishop, His Excellency, to tell us a bit of his journey and the 50 years of celebration. Your Archbishop, you're most welcome to Ugandan Catholics Online.
Thank you very much, and I thank you for all your services, always transmitting the masses and ceremonies of the Church. And I thank you particularly for this transmission on the occasion of my Golden Jubilee as a priest and the Silver Jubilee as a bishop.
I'm glad that you always follow some of the activities we air out.
Yeah.
That's really brilliant.
Yeah, sometimes when I am not active in another celebration, I get a chance to follow on television some of the activities you do.
That's great. We have been having our followers on different platforms. That's Facebook, Twitter, and then WhatsApp groups. We have 6 of them, and then on YouTube, trying to ask us and telling us, would like to know a story, a chat with the Archbishop, and we said, wow, let's try to look into it, and we see how possible we can. And I'm glad that when we reach you, you welcomed us.
Yeah, I think it is quite logical, and you have, I think especially the Ugandan population has the right to know about a Ugandan nuncio, and the first African nuncio. For the moment, the only one. We are hoping that there will be others. The journey of my mission as apostolic nuncio is a long journey.
And it's what we are going to know. But first, Your Excellency, we would like you to share, to share with us and the viewers about your family background. How was this family? How you grew up? And are you the firstborn? I mean, people would love to know just a bit of it about your family.
Yeah, as many people know, I was born in Mitala Maria parish, particularly in the St. Anthony Maternity Center, which has been there for a long time since the missionaries came. And immediately after my birth, 2 days later, I was born on the 26th of April, 1946. And then 2 days later, I was the fourth of 13 children of my mother. My parents were married in the Mitala Maria parish church, and at a very early age, I had the idea of becoming a priest. Yes.
When you were still?
Well, I was still in primary school, in the first years of primary school.
How was that?
Simply because the idea came, particularly, I was a boy, and my father took me to the church on Sunday. Coincidentally, there was a young priest who was called John Baptist Ted, who was celebrating his first mass after the ordination, a young one, because his mother was living in our parish, and in fact he was one of our neighbors.
Yes.
I was so impressed by that young priest. Well, second year of primary school, and the idea remained strong. It even became stronger and stronger. So when I concluded the primary school, I applied to be minor seminary at the age of 13. Yeah, and there I began my journey to the priesthood.
How did the parents welcome the idea of you being interested and going in that direction? How did they?
Yeah, my parents were not so surprised. I remember when I told my father that I had this idea, this desire. He just kept silence. But a few weeks later, It was the occasion of the pilgrimage to Namugongo, the 3rd of June. And he surprised me just on the eve. He told me, you will go to make a pilgrimage to Namugongo, to join the parishioners who are going for that pilgrimage. And he told me, then he asked the martyrs to intercede for you to become a priest. Wow. If God wants. Yes, so that's why since then I also have a very strong devotion to the Ugandan martyrs.
Wow. They really impacted a lot.
Yeah, and then since then I have very often made a pilgrimage to the shrines of Namugongo. Though I was not always working here or living here, because I have almost 60 years living outside, but whenever I came here, I always had a day to go to say Mass at the shrine of the martyrs at Namugongo.
So, Your Excellency, one would love to know the schools. You told us you joined the Kisubi Seminary at the age of 13. You applied. Would like to know after there the journey of the school life of it.
Yeah, in fact, I had studied at Sango village and then at Mitala Maria, St. Aloysius. But then when I went to the seminary, there at that time we had junior secondary school, which was 2 years, and then senior secondary school, which was 4 years. And then we did the school certificate at that time. That was the system. And then after that, in 1965, I joined Katigondo Major Seminary to begin philosophy. When I started philosophy, I always enjoyed the studies. I was a young man who liked studies. I enjoyed them. And then after 1.5 years, the Archbishop of Kampala suggested to send me to Rome. We were a big group of about 6 or 7 students, but in different classes. In my class we were 2, with a certain Monsignor John Carole, who died sometime and is buried in Chinda, Mitiana, near the Cathedral of Chinda. But we went then for studies in the Urbaniana University in Rome, where I finished the Masters in Philosophy. Then I began all the studies in theology up to the doctorate in theology. And then I returned and I was ordained also priest there.
Yes, Your Excellency, before that, during the life of, the seminary, we find people interested in football, others in music, you playing tennis, others in basketball. Did you have any hobby at that moment which you engaged in, or any activity which you really remember up to now? I liked all sports, and I did play many of the sports. I was a football player. I used to play the left wing, though I was very small. I used to play the left wing, and I used to even sometimes to score. Yes, and then I always like swimming, because the Kisubi Seminary is at the lake. I learned swimming immediately, and I always loved swimming. But not only that, I was also a good ping pong player, table tennis player. I used to play well. Those who were studying with me said, I was the only one who could win you. Yeah, but I enjoyed that. Beyond basketball, no tennis, we had volleyball. Volleyball, I also sometimes played volleyball. Later on, when I went to Europe, I also played basketball. But I continued. Then I also continued to learn. I learned tennis later on, which I have played even until recently when I retired. The music part of it.
The music. I also had music, and I loved music, because as soon as I entered the Kisubi Minor Seminary, I joined the school band. which was good, very big and small. We had about 40 instruments.
Wow.
And I was the one who was leading the side drummers.
Wow.
So we enjoyed that, and it helped us also to learn a bit of music, because our teacher was a real musician. He was himself was playing the violin since he was the age of 4 years. So he was giving us some introductions to music, and this helped us to make also the band was famous, because I remember even the band was invited by the last governor, British governor in Uganda, on the eve of independence in 1963. He invited our band to go to the State House at Entebbe.
Wow.
To play the last Union Jack, the national hymn of Great Britain, to bring down the national hymn of Britain, to pull down the Union Jack, the flag of Great Britain, for the last time, so that the following morning the flag of Uganda would be put on the same
for the
post.
independence.
Yeah, for independence.
Wow.
We were very proud of that.
That was a very big.
It was a very nice
the whole country.
Yeah.
For
the whole country. Wow. Yeah.
That was good. So, Your Excellency, you had told us you went abroad. Now after the Archbishop called you and you went abroad for further studies.
Yeah.
And you were ordained. First of all, the ordination. Your ordination. You were ordained. Were you ordained still here in Uganda, or it was abroad?
My ordination was in Rome, in the Vatican itself. That was the system at that time. When we finished the studies, if the bishop allowed, we stayed on. I was ordained in 1973. I went in 1967 for the first time. And then in 1973, I was ordained on the 6th of January by the Pope Paul VI.
Wow.
With many other candidates. We are 38 deacons of the same college, the Urbaniana College. And the system was that we did that before we could, and after the ordination we stayed on. We continued another year of studies before we could return home.
So you didn't say your first mass? Yeah.
My first mass, the very first mass there was here in Uganda, came after 1 year.
Wow.
Yeah, in 1974.
During the ordination, did you any of your family members travel?
There was nobody of my family member. There was no family member except, but we were many students from Uganda at that time in Rome studying. Those were the only ones who witnessed the priestly ordination ceremony. But when I returned, I immediately from Entebbe airport, the parish priest of Mitala Maria had already arranged that I go straight to my home and celebrate the first mass in Uganda. After 1 year. Yeah, even more than 1 year, because I was ordained in January 6th of 73, and I returned in the 74 in August.
That's 1 year and some months.
So almost a year and a half later. But that was the system at that time.
So when did you now return home for forever? At that time, did you go back, or you after that you were appointed at any parish here in Uganda? How was it here in Uganda after your return? Yeah,
I returned very happily, and with all the intentions to work here, because I did not have any other intentions. So when I returned, the Archbishop, it was Cardinal Kasujja. Archbishop Kasujja. He appointed me as the curate, as assistant parish priest in Mubende parish. At that time, Kampala Archdiocese was still bigger than what it is today. It also covered what is now Kinda Mitiana Diocese and also Lugazi Diocese. All that was still part of Kampala Archdiocese, and I was appointed in a parish, the Mubende parish, Mubende.
Yes.
That's where I went towards the end of August. But unfortunately, I did not stay long there. I fell sick. After 2.5 months. I came over here in Lubaga to be treated, and my treatment was delayed, lasted some weeks, maybe two, three months, and then I never went back after the sickness. I never went back to work. They even just sent my things here, and I had a long convalescence. Only after that convalescence, in January the following year, the Archbishop appointed me to attend the parish, where I continued to work with Monsignor Charles Kato, who died. It was also very interesting to work with the Father Charles Kato. We were two of us. At that time, I still remember very well that we had, I remember young priests like Father, the one who is working as a Fidei Donum priest in London, joined the seminary, and I had to sign his documents to go to the seminary. Father, now the name escapes.
Yeah,
but also it was the period when also our Archbishop was studying at Maria Goretti College at Katende. Yeah, he was not yet, maybe to that period when he was thinking of joining the seminary. But he was one of the students of Maria Goretti College at that time. But when I went from the beginning of 1975, but in October of that year, the Archbishop surprised me again. He told me, they are asking us to send someone for the diplomatic service.
Exactly, that was now the question I was going to ask. How did it start?
Yeah, they surprised me because they called me from Rome without my knowledge, but they sent me they sent a message to the Archbishop that if I accept, I could go. I told the Archbishop, even though I'm still going on with the convalescence, after consulting my doctor, we shall see if I can go. The doctor said, no, there's no problem, I continued. So I went back again to start in the diplomatic school of the Holy See, which is called Pontificia Academia Ecclesiastica in Italian language, the Pontifical Ecclesiastical Academy, where I spent 3.5 years preparing for the diplomatic service. Yes.
So this you serve in Mubende, then you serve in Katende. You are now called to by the Archbishop as to go in Rome for the diplomatic services. Yes. You studied for 3.5 years. After that, what next?
As soon as I finished the studies of the Pontifical Ecclesiastical Academy, the diplomatic school, they immediately appointed me. If you pass the exams, they appoint you. If you don't pass the exams, they send you back home. But then I passed the exams, and then they sent me immediately to Argentina to begin as the first year in our services. One is attaché to the embassy, the Vatican embassy there. As I began there in 1979, in April 1979. After 1 year, when one becomes secretary of the embassy, first year is attaché, second year then one begins appointed attaché, rather secretary to the embassy. And then I continued there. I stayed there for 3 years as secretary. It was the time when our Pope now, actual Pope, Pope Francis, was not yet a bishop. He was a priest whom I luckily visited. He was a priest, provincial of the Jesuits in a small town near Buenos Aires, the capital. And I remember we visited that house twice.
Wow.
We visited him.
Where he was?
Where he was, yeah.
So your first appointment being in Argentina,
yes,
and you met the current Pope.
Yes.
By then he was a priest.
He was a priest at that time.
And you were the secretary to the embassy. And
I was secretary of the embassy.
How was the?
Yeah.
How was he? I mean.
Well, he was a very welcoming priest, well known by many.
Wow.
Yeah, well known. I remember when I met him for the first time in Rome as a Pope, I asked, were you the one whom we met?
That experience,
yeah,
was he still remembering?
Because he was really asking, his name is Jorge. Jorge's George. Yeah, and said, yes, I was the one. Because I remember he was appointed bishop just after I left Argentina. I left Argentina. I arrived in Argentina in 1979, and I left Argentina in 1982. Only after my departure, he was appointed Archbishop of Buenos Aires.
So immediately after leaving the Argentina, I mean, that's a very interesting moment.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, when God really is moving you to different positions, really, there is a way how he tries to make you reach some points, and you really remember afterwards that this was God's plan.
Exactly.
So immediately after leaving Argentina, Your Excellency, you go back to Rome at that moment, or you come back home here?
No, my transfer was immediate. When I left Argentina, I was appointed to Central American country, Haiti. So I never returned neither to Rome nor to Uganda. I went straight from Argentina to Haiti, because it is just on the way. But it's a long way anyway, from Argentina to Haiti, the extreme south of American continent to Central America near Miami. A long journey, at least 8 hours flight. And then I went straight and started, because the nuncio who was waiting for me there as his secretary was without a secretary for a long time, for about 3-4 months without his secretary. So he wanted me to go immediately. I went there also because the country was preparing for the visit of the Pope. John Paul II was going to come on a visit to that country. So I went, and I think within 1 or 2 months the Pope came on to visit Haiti, which was a good occasion also for me. Second time to receive him, because also in Argentina, before I left Argentina, he came on a visit. I went to Haiti. As soon as I arrived there, he came also to visit that country for the first time. Haiti, a country that is, I think, the poorest in the American continent. So it also impressed very much Pope John Paul II, seeing the poverty that was there. And he wanted to find out how this country can be, this church, especially the church, can be assisted to come up. Yeah, especially to prepare to form its priests and so on. Yeah, and in Haiti I spent a good amount of time. I really spent 4 years. I stayed longer than in Argentina. Yeah, I had 4 years complete. It gave me a chance, the country gave me a chance to cultivate the French language, because that's the language of the country, official language of the country, besides Creole. Yeah.
So you serve in Argentina 3 years, and then still as a secretary the other side, and then you also come to Haiti and you serve also as the secretary for 4 years.
Yeah.
So
then after 4 years, I continued to Bangladesh. That's where Bangladesh in Asia. That's where they sent me. And I also, when I arrived there, I was secretary again, because my predecessor also had left. He was, in fact, later on he became a nuncio. My predecessor was called Monsignor Musaro, who just about, I think, 2 days ago reached the age of his retirement as nuncio too. But in Bangladesh, it was a very interesting mission, because Bangladesh is almost totally Muslim country. Christians were very few. At that time, Bangladesh was counting around about 108, at least between 150 and 180 million people, but Christians were less than 200,000. So we were very few. But the system in Bangladesh was that Christians were Catholics, so Christians were living in villages. You find a full village with the church, and all people around were Christians. So they felt that as they were living in a big country, a big Catholic country, because in that village, but once you go out of that village, you can drive 40, 50 kilometers. There is not a single Christian. All the others are Muslims. And I thank God that this period I was there, Pope John Paul II came on visit. Came again on visit. Everybody was very happy. Even the government was very happy, and the Muslim population was very happy. It's an honor for the country, and also possibility to deepen the dialogue between Christians and Muslims. So, but after 4 years, after 3.5 years, I remember, I stayed 3.5 years. I was transferred to, during that period also, before I was transferred, I think I had a chance also to visit Myanmar or Burma, which was formerly called Burma, but now it's called Myanmar, because it was the appointment of bishops in that country were depending on the nunciature in Bangladesh. So I remember once nuncio sent me there, and I got to know that country, Myanmar, which is one of the countries which had one of the first secretaries of the United Nations was coming from that small country. Those who remember the history of the United Nations, one of the first Secretary Generals of the United Nations came from that country. It was called Yusant. But then I visited it. Also, we still had problems with the Nepal. Nepal was still not yet decided whether to go with the nuncio in India or with the nuncio Bangladesh. Also, nuncio sent me there once, and I visited Nepal. There was still one church. The whole country had one church at that time, because the whole country is Buddhist. Now, these two countries are depending on another nunciature. Myanmar depends on the nuncio in Thailand, who is in Bangkok, and Nepal depends on the nuncio who is in India. So Bangladesh remains alone. After 3.5 years, I was transferred to Portugal. I also went there straight from the beginning of 1990. I went to Portugal, and there I stayed. After 2 years, they asked me to go again back to Haiti, because Haiti had a problem.
So you were solving actually those problems.
After 2 years in Portugal, I was asked to go immediately to Haiti, because our mission had been put on fire and everything was destroyed. So they asked, and they had sent there another Monsignor who was there alone for 1 year, and he wanted to go on holiday. So they told me, since I knew the country, they asked me to go there to replace him the period he would be on holiday, and then I would return to Lisbon. That's what I did. I bought my ticket of 2 months, return ticket. When I arrived there, he went on holiday. He was an Italian. Later on, this man became nuncio and cardinal. I replaced him, and then when he was during his holidays, they appointed him nuncio. So I received the message. Now you have to wait that he will be ordained bishop. He prepares himself to come back as a nuncio. So my 2 months extended to 5 months. And I spent 5 months there. But it was not bad for me because I knew the country is a country where I had worked for 4 years. 5 years earlier. 5 years I had worked there for 4 years. I was a tennis player there, and as soon as they saw me, they said, we invite you to come to our tennis club as an honorary visitor without paying. So I used to go there for recreation. But the country was still very violent, that country. So much so that even during my stay, I had to go to the ministry to ask for reinforcement of our security during the night, to get security people for our security. It was always very dangerous.
Archbishop, being in these different countries, they speak different languages, first of all. I mean, how was the communication and, trying to engage the leadership of those specific countries on what exactly you are solving and trying to engage with them?
You know, for our mission, one has to, that's why they invite young priests. In the diplomatic school, they don't accept anyone who has more than 33 years. One must be less than younger so that he's able to learn the languages. For example, when I went to Argentina, I had to begin practicing. I had done some courses of Spanish, but there I began to practice it, and since I used to say Mass in a community every day in that language, after 1 year and 2 years, you are already, you are at home in the language. When I went to Haiti, it was the same thing. I had done some theoretical knowledge of the language of French. There I practiced it, and there I was also lucky that a parish priest nearby asked me to assure the Sunday Mass in his church, parish church, every Sunday, and that obliged me to improve my French and to practice it. By the time I left the country, I was feeling at home with the language, the French language. So, but the diplomatic school gives you at least the basics of each of the different languages where one may be appointed, because you never know in which language you are going to work. In the diplomatic academy we have, if you are an English speaker, you are invited to follow courses of 2 other languages, French or Spanish, or French or German, like that. And I did all these courses.
So Your Excellency, after the leaving Haiti, when was that moment when you were appointed as the nuncio to a different country? Was it still the same country, or you were appointed? We want to know that story of you being appointed the first African nuncio.
But the journey was long, because from Haiti I returned to Lisbon, to Portugal. Then from Portugal I went again to I was appointed as secretary of the nuncio in Peru. Then from Peru, after 3 years, I was appointed again as secretary to Trinidad and Tobago, which is there. After 1 year in Trinidad and Tobago, they asked me to go to Algeria. The nuncio was not there because the nuncio accredited to Algeria had two countries, Algeria and Tunisia. Because of the terrorist activities which were in that country, in Algeria, you remember very well the story of the 7 Trappist monks of Tiberine, which is known, they were kidnapped by the terrorists, and then later on they were killed, they cut off their heads. Then that was the period when I was called to go there immediately, to stay there as a charge for Algeria, while the nuncio was leaving, had transferred provisionally his residence to Tunisia. And I stayed here but I even lived for those 2 years, first years, not in the Vatican embassy itself, because it was in a dangerous area. Security there was a lot of insecurity. I was not recommended to stay there. I just went and stayed in another area about 10 kilometers away, where it was relatively safe, and I lived there for 2 years. It is there when I received the appointment in 1998 on the 26th of May, that I was appointed Apostolic Nuncio in that same country, so where I had lived already 2 years.
2 years.
As charge. And then the appointment, of course, involves not only Algeria, it implied also nuncio for Algeria and Tunisia. So, in fact, when I was appointed, the Vatican asked me perhaps to find out a place where one can work normally, because I was also a refugee for 2 years, waiting for security to return to the country. Fortunately, I thank God that situation had improved a little, and I was able to return to our building, which had been left empty for 2 years, and also to collect everything that my predecessor had used in the other country, because he was living in a provisional house, a rented house. I collected it and brought it back, and there, after my appointment, I did all that work before I could return here to Uganda to be ordained a bishop.
That is what I was actually curious to know, because at that time you were still a priest, and you appointed the nuncio. What happens during that moment? Is one supposed to be, ordained and consecrated a bishop, or an archbishop, a Monsignor? So our viewers would like to know, first of all, what is the role of nuncio, and you try to break it down a bit for us. Who is a nuncio and what is the role of a nuncio?
The nuncio, when I was appointed nuncio, and this appointment is always combined with the appointment as a bishop. The same day appointed nuncio and also archbishop. But then, to begin the mission of nuncio, one has first of all to be ordained bishop, and then return to begin to present the credentials to the head of state. The apostolic nuncio is the ambassador of the Pope to the government of the country, to the head of state, where he is sent. Ambassador of the Pope, ambassador of the Holy See. The Holy See is the central governing body of the Catholic Church. At the head of that is the Pope. So this is what sends the nuncio to the other countries. And that mission begins with the presentation of credentials, letters of credence to the head of state. But at the same time, it is not a mission to the government or to the head of state or to that country, but also a mission, a papal nuncio is a representative of the Pope and of the Holy See to the local church. So he has also another letter call it a letter of credence, which is not signed by the Pope, but is signed by the Secretary of State of the Vatican. And this letter, Nuncio presents it to the President of the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the country where he goes. That is what I also did. I presented it to the Archbishop of Algiers, who was the President of the Catholic Bishops' Conference at that time. The mission, what does the nuncio do? Many people ask.
Yes,
what does the nuncio do?
Yes.
As an ambassador of the Holy See, some find, especially in our English-speaking countries, they call him ambassador of the Vatican. Vatican is just a small state which exists since 1929 in Rome as the seat of the Pope and of the governing body of the Church, of the Catholic Church, which is called the Holy See. But before 1929, Vatican was not an independent state. It was just it had residences because it is built on the spot where Saint Peter was killed and buried. Yeah. And many Christians of that time were buried around his tomb. But then, as successor, so the nuncio represents that represents that Holy See for what? To the government, to the heads of state, to present the position of the Church as regards peace, dignity of women, of people, of people, and especially the cause of peace. You have seen that in many occasions the Holy See and the Vatican, as they say, intervenes to look for reconciliation, to look for dialogue, to look for peace, to look for the dignity of for example, of the refugees. We have so many refugees from different countries, and the Church in all countries where we go, we are sent, we don't neglect that aspect, or to speak to the different organizations, but especially to the authorities, that they create a structure where a human being who flees from one country to another is able to find a home, is able to be received as a human being, but not as something to throw away. Yes, that mission is very important for us because we are working for the dignity of every person. But that is a mission that every nuncio will do, and just to aspect in any country where he is sent. But also the nuncio has the obligation, according to canon law, he is the one who directs the whole process for the appointment of bishops in the Catholic Church. I have written a small booklet, the appointment with the title, The Appointment of Bishops in the Catholic Church, just to show people how the process goes on in the Catholic Church. This process is directed by the nuncio, the apostle, because it is the Pope who appoints the bishops in the Catholic Church.
Yes.
It's not an election. It's not a job that one says, I love that job, I apply for it. No.
Even you will not know actually.
It's a mission. It's a mission. So it's the Pope, the nuncio directing that process. He consults the Catholic bishops, the bishops individually, but in secret. It is under pontifical secret that the process is done for the dignity of the people. For the dignity of the people, because there's no need that everybody knows that this one has been a candidate and is rejected for this motive. Why? There's no need for them to know. But so that process is done, consulting bishops, but not only bishops. It is a very ecclesial process what I have seen and lived and done myself, we will consult everybody who has information and confidential, rather sure information about a candidate. We can consult people like you, men or women. Responsibility. So there's a consultation of different people who are at the knowledge of a candidate. Yeah. So that those two jobs are, two aspects are the main works of the apostolic nuncio. But the appointment of bishops usually takes a lot of time for the nuncio, especially in countries where there are many bishops or many Catholic dioceses. Like when I was nuncio in Nigeria, we had very many dioceses. We had more than 50 dioceses, 56 dioceses, which means that the appointment of bishops were going on the whole year out, and that's in Africa. But in countries like Brazil, they have about 300, more than 300 dioceses. The nuncio is continually working on that process. And you see every 6 months or 3 months there are new bishops appointed, because some get old, others ask for auxiliary bishops, others ask for division of their dioceses because they have become too numerous and too big. So that process takes from the nuncio a lot of time.
Now, Archbishop, you told us after the appointment, we would love to know, were you ordained in Rome, or again as you were doing there as a priest, or you came back to Uganda to be ordained as a bishop, then you went back to serve as the nuncio?
Yeah, so my appointment came when I was on post in Algeria.
Yes.
I remember they told me, you can come here in the Vatican, we shall be happy to ordain you here. But I said no, I was ordained there and no member of my family was there. I now prefer to be ordained in Uganda. That's why I chose to come to Uganda, and I was ordained here in the Cathedral of Lubaga on the 22nd of August 1998. The Cardinal Wamala ordained me. Then I also asked that the president of the Ugandan Catholic Bishops Conference, at that time, also joins him. It was Archbishop Kalanda at that time, who was by coincidence also one of the first African vice rector in the major seminary at Katigondo when I was there. Then also the Vatican sent its representative, Archbishop of Vigano, who was at that time in charge of the diplomatic personnel in the Vatican. So he came also and he joined the celebration here in the Cathedral of Lubaga as secretary. Himself also had been a nuncio in Nigeria before, but at that time he was working as the one in charge of the diplomatic personnel in the Vatican. But then I was lucky and very grateful to the bishops of Uganda. Many of them, almost all of them, were present here in the cathedral.
That was a very beautiful moment, being appointed as a nuncio. Then you come back here in Uganda to be ordained. So, Your Excellency, which countries have you served as the nuncio? You have told us you were appointed in Algeria. After there, which countries have you served in as the nuncio?
As I've said, when I once appointed as a nuncio in Algeria, I continued for 6 years. After 6 years, I was transferred as a nuncio to Madagascar, to the islands of Madagascar. That nuncio is also very interesting because the nuncio in Madagascar is in charge, is also nuncio in Mauritius, is also nuncio in the Seychelles, is also apostolic delegate in Comore, the islands of Comore. He is also apostolic delegate to the island of La Réunion, which is part overseas territory of France. And then I was also delegate to Mayotte. Mayotte is a small island which was formerly the fourth island of Comore, which opted to become a part of France. But I was also dedicated to those islands too. So every now and again I had to travel from one island to another, and I did it.
Wow, that's good. So Madagascar, then
Mauritius, Seychelles. Then after that, after 6 years, I was appointed as a nuncio to Nigeria. Nigeria is already big enough, so it's also one country alone, where I spent more than 6 years, 6.5 years. I thought I would end my mission there. Yeah, but then they appointed me in 2016. I went to Nigeria in 2010.
Up to 2016.
Yeah, until it was at the beginning of 2010, and I stayed there until I think October 2016.
Yes.
Then I was transferred to Belgium and Luxembourg, to two European countries there, Luxembourg. I went to, by the end of 2016, I went to Belgium, Brussels. I presented my credentials to the King of Belgium in February the following year, 2017, and also immediately I presented my credentials to the Grand Duke of Luxembourg, a neighboring country, and until my retirement in 2021. Because of the age limit, all bishops present to the Pope their resignation when they are 75 years old, and that's also what I did. My resignation was accepted, even though the Pope wanted to say, "Oh, you are still strong, you could continue." But I said, "Well, I have the age." I have the age, and I said, "Okay." I came back here. I opted also to retire in Uganda.
So you have talked of very many countries here, Archbishop, where you have actually served, and this is really touching all those years, because other places you have spent 4 years, others more than 6 years, others 3 years. All your entire life you have actually spent it in those different countries. Is there any particular moment you recall in any of those countries, and you still really remember that special, memories in any of those countries, Your Excellency?
Well, in any of these countries, one can find something that was particularly interesting and also difficult. In all these countries, on earth there is no eternal paradise. But every country has something good and negative. But I can say one of the things that impacted me most was Algeria, because I arrived there at a very difficult moment. It is not normal that you go to a country and they tell you, "We don't know where you are going to stay." And that was the mission, that was the instruction I received. You go there, but we don't know where you are going to live. You go there and begin to look for a place where you can, a safe place where you can begin your work, where you feel safe to work for the church.
And you got the zeal to go there, Your Grace. You got the zeal to go there.
I had to go. I was appointed and I accepted the appointment. So I went, and they told me, go. I stayed, go and begin to stay in a hotel. I began in a hotel, looking for an ideal place where one can serve the church. And in fact, hotel was not the ideal place. So after some weeks, I asked the Archbishop, and he found me a house of old aged priests, elderly priests, who were not many, because there were few, there were just 2. He said, "Maybe you can stay with them." That's what I did. I stayed with them for 2 years for my work, until waiting for a moment when there would be enough security and peace to return to our official residence and house of work. thank God, after 2 years, the Episcopate came. So that event is always very hard, remains, because it was, even then when I returned to my official residence, it was not enough, because even there, one could not go around as one could do. The government did not allow us to leave the capital without having an escort car. If you don't have it, the government, you have to ask it from the government to provide it for you if you really need to go outside the capital. And that is what we used to do all the 6 years I was there. You could not leave the capital without an escort car. And usually they gave you 2 jeeps of security people. Which means, because the situation was still very critical. Security situation was critical. That was one of them. But I cannot also forget all those countries where I had different experiences. Like Argentina was a country which was a very Catholic country. At that time we arrived there when they were still suffering from the effects of the people who had disappeared during the military regime that had killed a lot of people or arrested a lot of people because of political reasons. Many people had disappeared. We worked on dossiers, at least 15,000 dossiers of people who had disappeared. That was also very sad to see. And many of the relatives used to come to us to see if we could find out news about them. That was another impacting experience for us. And but also I would say experience also like Belgium, the last country where I have worked, which is the capital of Europe, because the European Union has its offices there. Yeah, even though the parliament is officially in Strasbourg, but in Brussels there is the parliament west, because another parliament where they sit at least for 6 months, and then they transfer again to Strasbourg because of historical motives, because they agreed that the parliament would be in Strasbourg, but because the governing bodies of the European Union are in Brussels, then they created another very beautiful parliament for the European Union, which is there, so that they can work near each other. But also that is an interesting experience to see how the European Union worked. But I was not a nuncio of the European Union, because we had a second nuncio who was just in charge of the European Union, accredited to the European Union. He had his total control of what I was doing now. For me, I was nuncio to the Kingdom of Belgium. But all this, some of the ambassadors or members of parliament who now and again were accredited to that country.
Yes, now Your Excellency, you Pope the Second, Benedict the 16th, and then Pope Francis. Just briefly, for our viewers.
As a nuncio, I cannot even say that I began with Paul VI because he ordained me. From him, when I was still in the diplomatic school, he used to receive us every year, all the students. I remember of him. He used to say, celebrating his 80th birthday. He used to say, when I was a young priest, I was very weak. And his bishop told him, I cannot even appoint you to any parish. So you better go to Rome and study. Maybe during the studies you will gain energy. And he told us at the age of 80, all his classmates had died. The one who was weak was the only one surviving. Perhaps also we ourselves the same thing. I was either not very strong in my first parish. I began with the sicknesses, and I was even transferred because I was sick, but I'm still living up to now. Yeah. Then we began with Pope John Paul.
Yes.
Succeeded him. He was the one who sent me as a diplomat, because he took over just, we were the first diplomats he sent out from the diplomatic school, John Paul II. I also assisted at his enthronement. Of him, I remember his first homily when he was, because I was at the ceremony of the beginning of his mission as Pope. His words impacted many and also impacted many of us. Do not be afraid and do not fear to receive Christ.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is true, which is the message even perhaps today. Some people fear to receive Christ. Some people fear to receive the message of Jesus Christ as it is a message of Jesus Christ. It is for the good. And that's why we have many problems, because some people fear to receive the message of Jesus Christ. And we remember when John Paul II said those words, what followed? The Berlin Wall, which had divided Germany, collapsed. Collapsed. Yes. And that opened up new channels for the whole of Europe, because at least the walls came down and the message of Jesus Christ even went to the other side of the walls. I think this is what the word needs even today. Not to fear to receive the message of Jesus Christ as a message of Christ, not the message of men that many people remember. Some have not remembered it, but history has registered that. Yes. Then John Paul II came in when I was, in fact, the Saturdays he lived. I was working as a student of the diplomat school on doing my experience in the Vatican State. Those Saturdays I was working in the Vatican State, in the offices, but I never even had a chance to meet him personally. Short. A very humble person, impacted us for his humility, and in fact when we see him being beatified in our days, there is no wonder.
Yeah, that's true.
Then we had Pope Benedict XVI.
Yes.
Pope Benedict XVI received us as a nuncio, received me as a nuncio whenever I had to change from one country to another. He came when I was a nuncio in Madagascar. So when I left Madagascar and I was appointed nuncio to Nigeria, I received a special audience, private audience with him. He was already well known because he had been the prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. He was also well known because he was the one who had worked very well on the new catechism of the Catholic Church, which we are now following today. But when he was also admired for his spirituality and for his love of the church. I remember when he retired in 2013, the first time he went to Castel Gandolfo as Pope Emeritus, they asked him, now you are here, what do you think about he said, I am beginning the last part of my astral pilgrimage. And he was preparing, and I'm now praying. I'll spend it praying for the church, for his successor. And this is what he did. It was impressive to see that he continued to live as in a monastery created in the Vatican, just to pray until he died.
Then Pope Francis.
Then came Pope Francis. He brought a new approach to the pontificate, especially when he impacted the people. He did not want to stay in the palaces of the Pope, the traditional palace of the Pope. He went and continued to stay in the Santa Marta residence, where we also, I used to stay there all the time. I went to the Vatican, even until I retired as a nuncio. We used to stay in that same house. But also, it was also good for us to be near the Pope, and he created also a new system of receiving all the nuncios. We are not very many, about 105 in the whole church. He receives us every 3 years. He has started that system, which is very good. He calls us to Rome. We spend about a week or 5 days in Rome, doing different meetings with the superiors in Rome, in the Vatican, and also with him, which was very nice. Even though he was not a diplomat before, but with his concept of a pastor, he loves so much the aspect of evangelization in the church, and he knows that a nuncio, since he's a representative, wherever he's sent, he should live that spirit of evangelization.
Okay, thank you very much for that experience of all these different popes. Yeah. Now, Your Excellency, the life in Uganda after retirement, me personally have seen you actually in very many parishes and the functions where you actually, serve and lead, the celebration and the mass. So it's something which is really, touching. Someone would think that you have come actually to rest, but you actually continue. Briefly, within maybe a few seconds, we'll tell our viewers how life in Uganda is and in your retirement.
Yeah, I opted to retire to Uganda because on one part I thank God that I retired at the age of 75, but with still some energy. I said I would better go and do some pastoral work, which I have not been doing before. I did, of course, as a nuncio, you do a little of it, but very little. It's not the principal activity. But here also, with the agreement with the Archbishop of Kampala, both the late Archbishop Rwanga and also the new Archbishop, they also encouraged me to return here. And this Archbishop also encouraged me particularly to stay here in this residence, so that I can do some of the activities that I need to be, some services which really need to be done. I really find that my impression was that the church in Uganda is growing. The Christians in Uganda, they are no longer the Christians of 100 years ago. They need something more than the first catechism. So they need a deepening of the Catholic Church, which I see the church here in Uganda is trying to do, because they have many movements, even the new movements, Christian movements which have come up, which are dispensing a deepening of the faith of our people. That makes me happy and also encourages me to continue helping in that little that I can. The Archbishop here, going also in the parishes or in the schools for confirmation or for particular celebrations, even for marriages, to encourage the late, especially. We need families, to encourage families that get married, because from the families we get all types of vocations. So for me it is very much encouraging. The political situation, I am learning very little by little, because I've been away from Uganda for more than 50 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I cannot pretend to know the politics of Uganda. Even the many politicians, I hear the names, but I have not met them personally. Many politicians I have not met personally. I know the names, I hear the names. I am beginning to know, which is, as one who has been a diplomat elsewhere in different countries, it is part of life. You reach a country, you don't know anybody. With the time, you get to know, this one is this one is that one. And this is also what I'm doing also here, little by little. That's why I told many news people, please, you will excuse me, I don't accept interviews, because you may ask me questions of things you expect me to know, which I don't know. Yes.
Yes, Archbishop, as you celebrate the 50 years Golden Jubilee and the Silver Jubilee, the 25 years of Episcopal, what message do you have for the young priests and the youths who are out there during this life you have lived in?
Yeah, as I celebrate 50 years as a priest, first of all, I thank God that He has called me to be a priest. But I have lived my priesthood not as a mission, always as a mission and as a divine call. And I thank God that I have lived these 50 years as a priest happy. I've been happy. I thank God, because I have tried to do God's will. That is what makes one happy. If one says, my project, I want to do that, I do not have that. For me, as my motto said, according to your will, according to your word, secundum verbum tuum, I have lived that motto. What the church tells me to do, I have done that, and I try to do it with my heart. But also, the 50 years I have lived as a priest, I have given time to prayer. A life of a priest without prayer, according to me, would be difficult. And all our mission, I think, is without prayer, is a life that can be dry, and perhaps also painful. But with the prayer, even the most difficult moments are a joy, because you feel taking the cross of Jesus and with Him, not alone.
Yes.
Yeah. That, I think, has been my type of living, all the different experiences I have lived. As I was telling you, in Algeria, we could not even get out of the house even unless we have an escort. But all these things, it did not make me sad to say that I want to apply to go away and let another person come. No, I just stayed, tried to do, but with the prayer, I was finding joy and possibilities of getting out of even of very complicated situations. Certain things we cannot say. Yes.
Yes, Archbishop, your last message for all the viewers who are viewing you right now as we conclude this very great moment.
Yeah, as the last viewers, I would say, as a priest celebrating 50 years, I would say we need good priests. And these priests do not come from heaven, they come from among us. So I would invite families to be real Catholic families, our Catholic families, Christian families, so that the young people can come out of those families with good intentions, not deceptive intentions, but with good intentions of serving the church, which needs to know more and more the message of Jesus Christ. And then that's for the families and the rest of that. for the priests, I would say, I think what I have lived was that this faith for prayer will always happen, even in most difficult situations. And not only prayer, we as priests, I have seen where I have worked, that I am not alone. I need others, priests, to help me. For me, for the last 42 years, I was in the mission as a diplomat. I was not working with the Ugandans. I was working with different people. An Italian nuncio. I worked with the secretary of Nigerian, one Pakistani, Australia, Germany, one from France, one from Ivory Coast, one from Venezuela, Latin America, one from Italy. But as priests, happy priests, trying to cooperate to understand one another. If we live that spirit of community life, creating it, it makes one live happily as a priest. Not saying that I'm now going to my friend. But we need a community. Every priest, each one helps the other. And I'm so happy that I still, even today, I have still contacts with some of the secretaries who have worked with me, all the priests who were ordained with me. I still have them. Those who are strong, I wanted even to invite, they wanted even to come here if God gave them good heads to do it. And I think I will have at least one who has confirmed will come from Nigeria. Yeah. Because that's the type of life we have lived always, in communion with the others, in a community life. We contribute to each other, because our mission is not my mission, it's a mission of the church, where God has invited me to serve for a period, and others will continue what I have not been able to do.
Thank you very much for what you have given us. All our viewers in Ugandan Catholics Online would love to appreciate you for viewing us, and we have given you the best which you have been actually asking us to give you. Please share the video so that it reaches out to very many, and of course we shall request for a final blessing for all the viewers who are actually watching us, so that they receive also the blessing. But we would like to appreciate you for the time you have given us so much.
Yeah, I thank you very much also for the time you have given to me, and also this occasion to thank many people who have helped me in one way or another in these last 50 years as a priest and 25 years as a bishop. Family members, friends whom I meet here and there, here in Uganda and outside, and I excuse myself if maybe some others have not been comprehensive with me, or they have misunderstood me, but as I said, my life has been that of serving others, as a churchman, to bring Christ Jesus the Savior to everybody. And now I give a blessing to everybody. May the Almighty God bless you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. And I will continue to pray for every one of you, and I ask everybody to also to pray for me. Thank you. Thank you.